Welcome to another Youth Centered podcast. We've been off for a few weeks. It's been a crazy fall here at the Youth Center, but we're back full at it. We've got a few more that we're going to do in December, and then we'll be back full-time in January. As you know, we like to try to do one a week. I'm very excited. This is one we've been trying to put together for a little while now. I'm really lucky here to have North Andover Middle School teacher, Pat McGravey, who's come on today to talk about his amazing civics program. And we're also going to touch on a few other things, but the focus will be this great civics program, which I had the pleasure of actually being one of the guest speakers of. So first of all, Pat, thanks for coming on the Youth Centered podcast.
Great to be here, Rick. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Pat, what we like to do at first is you are pretty known to parents in the middle school area, but there are a lot of people that may not know you, and it's going to be some of our listeners that probably their kids had you many years ago. So if you could just give us a little bio of who Pat is.
Sure. So Pat McGravey, and I actually was born in North Andover. Went to the North Andover Public Schools through middle school, and then I went to Central. I've been teaching in North Andover 8th grade pretty much since, I believe, 1996. I came on as a substitute, and then 97. So I've been here 20 plus years at NAMS, teaching 8th grade for my entire career. In terms of a little bit besides me being a teacher at NAMS, I'm married. I have two sons, Bennett and Xander. Bennett is in the 5th grade, and Xander is in the 3rd grade. I live in Melrose, Massachusetts. Obviously, I'm passionate about history and civics, but I'm also a huge music fan. I still, even with kids, try to go to as many concerts as I can. I'm definitely into music, and that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks for coming on. So we've got a bunch of questions that we want to get right into this civics program. And I'm hoping you could actually, off air, we talked a little bit about social studies teaching and, kind of some past disciplines of it. And you've brought this creative, what I call innovative civics program. So if you can start to just tell us how it all came about, how did the vision for it, and then take us through a little bit about the first, year or two of it's been of.
Great. So it all started about 2 years ago when the Massachusetts history frameworks changed. Previously, 8th grade, we were teaching U.S. History 1, which was from the colonies till the Civil War. That's what I've been doing predominantly for my career, with a little bit of civics sprinkled in. The frameworks did change, and they decided to go all civics for the entire 8th grade year. And that was actually combined with a civics bill that Governor Baker signed into law, I believe, last spring, that kind of piggybacked off of the frameworks and said not only would 8th grade do civics for the year, it was mandated in all public schools, but the other part of it was at the end of the year, all 8th graders in the Commonwealth would have to do a civics action project in a team or group. And so that's how it kind of began. And I knew it was coming. And this is mandated fall of 2020 is when this is all supposed to go down. So last year, to be proactive, the Department of...
Not to interrupt you, but it was interesting when I first came on to be one of your guests this year. I actually had to go back and look at the definition of civics. Obviously I grew up, I'm a lot older than you, but, U.S. history, world history, that type of thing. Define civics for me.
So to me, civics is the study of government, but I believe it should be taken a step further. It should be the study and application of civics, of government. In other words, we want our students to not only be citizens, we want them to be engaged citizens, and not necessarily one that run for political office or anything like that, but people who know the process. Unfortunately, I think we're in a state right now where there are quite a few people that don't know how civics and how our government works. So I believe that the definition of civics now is not only the study of government, but I think that verb or that process of application is huge. That's my definition.
Awesome. Great. Continue.
So the state decided to get as many 8th grade teachers they could in a room last year, just for us to kind of what you would call unpack the frameworks And we looked at them and broke them down into units. And while at the same time, the state said, look, I know this is a huge change for 8th grade, and we have some resources for you. We have 3 companies or 3 organizations that are here, and they have already created a civics curriculum, soup to nuts, everything, all the frameworks covered. And we're going to have them do some presentations for you just to kind of feel out. We as the state believe, or as DESE, we believe that these 3 are cutting edge. So one was iCivics, which is predominantly online, which Sandra Day O'Connor founded. And the other one was the Democratic Knowledge Project, which was a think tank out of Harvard University, the Safra Ethics Center. So many think tanks there. And I immediately connected with them last fall. And the first meeting, ironically, was at North Andover High School. So there were so many people in a room, and I ended up talking to this gentleman named Michael Blau, who is the curriculum director. And him and I started talking. We exchanged emails. I met him a couple more times at a few more of the meetings. To make a long story short, they were only piloting in the public schools in Cambridge in 2018, 2019. And 2019, they were looking to branch out, and they were mainly doing Boston, Newton, Cambridge, Boston public schools. And I, kind of being an outgoing person, said, well, did you ever think of possibly doing the Merrimack Valley? And he kind of looked at me, and he, first of all, didn't know where the Merrimack Valley was, which, wasn't a good sign. And so then he goes, well, I really think we're trying to stick to Boston. And then something happened where he sent me another email and said, well, we're having an information session in May on a Saturday at Harvard. We're going to pitch what Cambridge has done, and we're looking for people to sign up to commit to a 1-year pilot where you would pilot with your team of teachers. So I went to the meeting. I saw the student work. I was wowed. I could not believe what I was seeing. So then I had to go from selling to Harvard to selling to North Andover Public Schools, because what I had to pitch was, so I want to pilot a year early because 2020 is when we're supposed to start. And I will be the only one in the school. So 3 8th grade teams, I will be the only one doing it. The other 2 teams, would do the traditional, what they're supposed to do, and then I would kind of pilot. So I pitched it to my boss, George Gonsalves, and the head of humanities, Kristen Ando, K through 12. And we had a couple meetings back and forth. We had some great dialogue, and they were like, get some more information about it. So George and I met in Cambridge. George was great enough to drive there in July. We met with the Democratic Knowledge Project. They pitched it. George thought it sounded amazing. We sent it to Kristen. Kristen then went to Dr. Gilligan and Lorraine Marks, the assistant superintendent, and they gave me the green light. So I found out probably the beginning of August that I would be piloting this civics program. So the process of me actually getting it approved was kind of like I'm thinking this year, the kids have to do a civics action project. This is kind of my civics action project.
Sure.
Bringing this to North Andover and hopefully keeping it and letting it move into the future. So that's the kind of journey of how I got here.
So this is actually the first year you've put it into place.
Correct. This is the first year. I've only done civics sprinkled.
Yep.
So the Democratic Knowledge Project has, I believe, 7 or 8 curriculum units that I do throughout the year, and they cover all the frameworks. It's, as a history or a social studies or civics teacher, it's a spiral curriculum, so it's not necessarily chronological. It's all thematic. So if you're used to doing things chronologically, it's a little bit thinking outside the box. But the engagement and the role play of what you're getting from the lessons has been amazing. It's also been, to me, 20 plus years in, it's been so freeing to take, a lot of people think I'm crazy, but to take all my lessons and figuratively throw them out the window and start as like a first year teacher has been so exciting. I mean, I'm only like a day or 2 ahead of the kids, and I'm testing out everything, and it's a pilot, so there's not as much pressure. I'm a year ahead of the game. So, the whole process has been very liberating for me.
Well, for me as an outsider watching it, and we're going to get into the response right away, but your passion for this is unrivaled, and it's refreshing for me because one of my things is never rest on your laurels, and not to criticize any of our educators that are kind of stuck with just doing their thing year to year. I love the fact that you're willing to almost throw things out the window and start, because my day there, I saw an engaged group of kids. I spoke at 2 different groups, and they were really into it. And, nobody was falling asleep. And, as a speaker, you wonder if they were going to fall asleep. But, it was really positive. So tell me a little bit, what's the response been from everybody, administrators, parents, and students?
I'll tell you everything. So, unfortunately, I don't want to use the word unfortunately, but the first unit is so outside the box. It is called Identity, Values, and Agency. And it's a series of lessons where the kids really start thinking about their own identity and their own values. So it starts out with, what's your name? What does your name mean about you? How'd you get your name? And then it goes into values. And it's great because the kids are really finding themselves. And I think from a person from the outside, they're thinking, oh, what's this, hippy dippy identity Harvard stuff? Why are you? But I believe Harvard when the kids have the identity and the values, and then when you get into the real stuff, they have so much more of a frame of reference, and and they've gone through some growth, and they talk about their identity, and I think it's exciting. The other thing about the first unit is we do talk about things like privilege. We talk about stereotyping. We talk about racism. We talk about discrimination. We talk about inequities of wealth. So for me, I had to be very, very careful about how we went about it. And Harvard's mantra, and you wouldn't think this because Harvard has this left-wing reputation, is nonpartisan, nonpartisan, nonpartisan. So straight out of the box, from my weekly emails or to when I met with parents, I had to stress that this was nonpartisan. And part of me was a little nervous because what happens if a parent complains?
Sure.
Now, I have not had one single parent complain. I've had a couple parents question, and they make assumptions. And I believe, and part of the civics discourse in the first unit is having a civilized dialogue. So as a teacher, when someone says, well, what are you teaching my kid? Instead of getting defensive, I embrace them and we talk. And I had a couple conversations with a couple parents, and they were relieved. And it was great. It was so cool to just kind of have a conversation with someone who, I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat or whatever, they're questioning it. So from the parents, let's just talk from the parents. The parents have been amazing. I'm getting, I do a weekly McGravey memo. I'm getting so many emails from parents. People out in the community have been definitely saying things to me. I've got a few that have questioned, but I'm very, it's funny when I see George or when I see Dr. Gilligan or when I see the guidance counselor, I say, have there been any complaints? Have there been, I just want to make sure it all goes well. So I think the parents really like it. And I think why the parents like it, the number one thing that parents are telling me is they're saying, for the first time in a very long time in the relationship with my kids, they're coming home and they're talking about what they did in school.
Wow.
And so for me, as a parent, I know that my children really don't talk about something unless it's great. So that's been great. Administration, Cheryl Ramondo, Steve Wrigley, and George Gonsalve, they've been amazing. They've been so supportive. They've been so encouraging. It's great. It's great. And then I think the most important critics or judges are the kids.
Sure.
And to me, I've just seen a lot of engagement. I haven't seen a lot of misbehavior. And the thing I love about the Harvard curriculum is it's not just this A+ kid that's responding to it. It's kids on IEPs. It's kids on 504s. It's the kids in the social and emotional program. The success that they're having. And I think the evidence that really validated everything for me is the end of the identity unit. They have to do an identity project, which is a pretty thorough project. It's a very long project. And what do I have, 124 students? As of Thursday, every single kid turned one in. I think that's the first time I've ever had a 100% turn in.
Wow.
And I'm talking kids that are on a 4th grade level, kids with social and emotional issues. So I think, and you know, kids don't really say to you, oh, I love that lesson, I love that. It's kind of not cool to do that. But I'm hearing from parents and I'm hearing from different people that the kids do seem to really, really enjoy it. So I'm going to keep doing it. So.
Yeah, I mean, the overall, and again, as an outsider, and my first connection with it was obviously being asked to come and speak, but rave reviews from everybody I've talked to. I got to meet your actually in-laws were there the day that I was there also, but just the way teachers were talking about it, because in this, when I did speak, you had other teachers there, which was great, you know, kind of seeing how the whole thing goes. And to your point, I'm all about inclusiveness, and when I looked around the room, you had all types of kids, and they were all engaged, and some of the questions from me were from all types of kids. So it wasn't like just one group of high achieving kids asking me questions. It was everything across the board, which was great. So take me through, you know, what happens after this identity unit all the way up to the Civics Action Project.
So and I also just want to say quickly, Harvard, the Democratic Knowledge Project is so supportive. So what I do is not only I'm not really alone. It's almost like when I was a student teacher, we have a supervisor, and there are 3 of us, I believe. I think not Masco, Triton is the other school. So we meet. It's called a pod. Right. So we meet every other week to talk about all of these things. So it's this huge community. And then once every couple months, we all meet at Harvard. But probably one of the coolest things to support is the people who write the curriculum. I have direct access to their emails. So for the first time in my career, the people who are writing the curriculum, like you email them and they email you back. Right. And they take your suggestions, and, you know, they take criticism very well. And, you know, a quick example was, you know, they put a Doonesbury cartoon in something, and you know, you needed a college degree to figure the thing out. So I told them, I'm like, this is not working. And they were very, very receptive to that. So by the way, Harvard and the Democratic Knowledge Project are not charging us anything for this. All these resources are free. So every single lesson, all the professional development that I'm getting, that I'm trying to bring out to my colleagues, totally free.
So when I met the guy from the Harvard think tank the day I was there, I mean, that didn't cost the school system anything. That was just part of the program.
The speakers?
Yeah. No, when he came.
Yeah. So he just came, and which was great. In terms of the curriculum, so I just started Unit 2, which is called How to Write a Constitution. And again, it's really thinking outside the box. It starts off talking about the colonists and grievances and complaints against the government. And they want the kids to internalize this. So without getting too into specifics, I gave them a fake pop quiz, which was an unfair pop quiz. I told them it was going to count as 100 points or whatever. And I kind of had to play the role. And they were getting so angry, and they were getting so mad. And then they complained. And then they talked about boycotting and refusing to take it. So when they learn about the colonists doing the same thing, they've lived it. Sure. They've lived it. So how to write a constitution is we're putting the kids in the shoes of the founding fathers. So before we read the Declaration of Independence, the kids write a Declaration of Independence. So that allows them to have that frame of reference where they're going to say, oh, now I understand this. And basically Unit 2 continues with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and kind of like a blueprint of what we're learning. And then the other units go into, you know, freedoms, Supreme Court cases, how a bill becomes a law, the three branches of government, impeachment. So probably between now and March, I'm going to be all in with government. But again, like I said, it's a life skills course. It's a life skills course.
Sure.
How will you use this in your life? It's not just isolated experiences. Once we get through that, around April, we start coming back to being a civic agent and identity. And they pick an issue that they're really passionate about. And we begin talking about writing editorials and how editorials work. And I'm working with the new librarian, Miss Roosh, who's fantastic. And the kids are going to write editorials, and then we're going to translate that editorial to a civics action project. And one of the reasons why I brought you in as a speaker is I am kind of setting the stage and setting it all up where I'm having, I think we're going to go on our 5th one, Civics in Action speakers. So what I'm doing is I'm inviting people like yourself and politicians to come into the kids and model how does civics work? How do you like what's the real deal with civics? And talking about their own civics action projects. And the Democratic Knowledge Project has these 10 questions that kids are supposed to apply. And I had everyone kind of apply it. And with yours, you getting the youth center built, that was a civics action project.
Sure.
The town manager, Melissa, she talked about in Sudbury and how Sudbury had to decide whether or not to buy a campground and have the town run the camp for sentimental reasons. So State Representative Trom Wynn came in, State Representative Christina Minicucci, former town manager Andrew Mailer came in. All these people are coming in, and the kids are learning so much. They don't know they're learning, but they are. And then what's going to happen is once spring comes, hopefully they will have had the blueprint of success. And I think it's important that people talk about their failures. I think that's really important. When the town moderator, Mark DeSalvo, came in, he talked about first time running for office. And sorry, that was Mr. Mailer. I apologize. Mr. Mailer talked about losing his first election.
Sure.
So I think it's important. So again, the Civics Action Project, it is going to happen. It's going to be grouped. The kids are going to be in groups. It's going to be a pilot. So I'm going to make it very loose on purpose. I don't want kids to feel pressure. It's going to be like a Civics Action Project light a little bit, just because it's just the first year. And every year I think it's going to get bigger and better. So that's pretty much, that encapsulates kind of what I think the year is going to be. But as I said, I am only a couple days ahead of the kids. So that's kind of where I'm living right now. But I like it.
The speakers, you mentioned myself and other people that have come. What's the reaction? You've given us some feedback, but what would you, from after we leave, and that's when they're really honest and say, I got something out of it, I didn't get something out of it. What's the reaction?
So the reaction from the kids is, the first one was very tight. So it was very structured, and it was almost like the traditional, almost like 1950s, 60s. Hey kids, politician's going to come in and talk to you. And they're going to talk to you and talk to you and talk to you. So the kids gave me feedback, and they were like, so we want more opportunity to ask questions.
Sure.
We want more opportunity to be engaged. So I'm taking all of their criticisms and I'm applying them, and each one is getting better and better. But I think the reaction from the kids, I think, has been great. They love it, but they're also, and I'm not saying politicians aren't humans, but they're humanizing politicians. When they're posing for selfies with state representatives, like, I'm going to be honest with you, when I was in 8th grade, I didn't know who my state representative was. So we're bringing it to them. The kids learning the story of the youth center, like that's something they go to. You had them raise their hands, and like the whole room said they had been here. They had no idea about this place. So that was such an aha moment. And again, what it's doing is it's personalizing it for them. And probably a really exciting one that I'm going to be having on a week from today is one of my former students is coming in. And Caitlin Parks is her name. And she is an intern for Congressman Seth Moulton going to American University.
Sure.
So this is a kid in my class that I think is going to be amazing. I think I'm going to be so interested to see how the kids react, because she's only 18 years old.
Yeah.
And then a city councilor at large from Methuen, I think Mr. Hamilton, who's friends with Caitlin, he was elected to the Methuen councilor at large at the age of 18.
Yeah, he's young. Yeah.
He's so young. So he's going to come in and talk to the kids. And probably one of the best ones that we did is obviously that they talk about the Harvard connection. Well, I am seeing the Harvard connection a little bit, and it's benefiting my kids. The Harvard Constitution Association, which is law students at Harvard, they came in to my class. I had 6 Harvard law students teach my kids how to debate using the Tinker case.
That's incredible.
And the kids, and again, I have to say, I didn't have to be in the room. I felt like a third wheel, because it was this mutual admiration society. The 8th graders thought this was going to be boring and lame, and they were like, this is amazing. And the Harvard law students were like, this is going to be painful. It's community service for them, so they kind of have to be here. It was a love fest. I mean, I couldn't believe how much they loved it and how much they got out of it, to the point where they are going to send 12 Harvard law students in the spring to come. And we're going to, so again, you can't get any better than learning about constitutional law from a Harvard law.
Nothing better than that.
I mean, come on. I mean, it's crazy. And all it was an email. All it was it started off with an innocent email, and then it turned into, a phone call, and then they were supposed to stay for an hour, and they're like, we want to stay after lunch. So now it's turning into they're coming back.
See, this is what's exciting to me. As I didn't thrive with teachers that just lectured me all day, and I don't know if I was paying attention the way I should have been paying attention, but you're bringing people in that kids can actually relate to, and obviously everybody's actually really enjoying it. When I was there with a couple of the speakers, the way that they talked about their experience. So I was in the afternoon speaker, so I spoke to our 2 reps in the morning, and they were just raving about what the experience was like for them. It wasn't just like, I got to go talk to the middle school kids. They were talking about it. And obviously the moderator and myself in the afternoon, we just left there saying, well, this was a great time that we had. Obviously, the program, I think, is amazing, and I'm hoping this is going to continue and evolve. So one of the best things I like about it is it's evolving. You're only one step ahead of the kids.
Barely.
And this civics program might even look totally different next year.
It could.
But your passion is something I'm very impressed with. Let me switch gears a little bit. With you, the teacher, as part of this civics, I'm really big on culture, team culture. Our culture here at the Youth Center, I feel, is second to none. We do a lot of work in building a culture. How would you describe your culture as a teacher, your classroom, obviously the civics piece of it?
So I kind of, what I kind of posed to the kids at the beginning of the year is I kind of really talked it up and said, you're going to be kind of trailblazers, because we've never done this before. Civics has never been taught in this school. And I want you to think of it like that, and got a lot of buy-in. And then to be honest with you, played the Harvard card a little bit, got some, Harvard plaques, and, did a few things, and kind of played up the Harvard thing and said, you're Harvard students at the Merrimack Valley Satellite campus, right? And so, they kind of were like buying into that a little bit. And so I think they've bought in completely. But the other thing that I believe in passionately is about recognizing them. So once a month at all of these speaker series, we do something called the 8B Civics Agent Award, where I recognize 2 kids in each class, so 10 kids a month. And the award is very, very specific. And, I have a breakfast for them, and, and we have donuts and things like that. And just to see the kids who've won the awards, it's not your like end of the year 8th grade. We recognize kids, which is lovely and it's wonderful. But you could probably predict who's going to get the awards. These kids that get the awards, there might be teachers in other classes are like, that kid got an award. So I'm really trying to recognize that. And the other thing that I'm really trying to do with our culture and our community is protecting them and saying, look, you do not have to share anything that you don't want to share. But with that, I've seen a lot of growth. I've seen kids really come out of their shell and be very, very articulate about things, to the point where, they're going up to speakers and shaking hands.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I really want to do in terms of the community is, and I believe, and you and I have had these conversations before, North Andover is changing as a community. We're getting much more diverse, which I think is a great thing.
Sure.
To be honest, it's not really reflected in the staff, in my opinion. So I'm trying to bring in speakers that represent a wide variety of the diversity of the community. And I will tell you that one of the Harvard Law students was from Korea, and one of my most timid, quiet girls literally ran up to her after the speech. So I went over afterwards and I said, what's going on? And she goes, Mr. McGravey. She's like, that's the first Asian person that's ever talked to me in class before.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. And, and now I'm also thinking that I have a connection to the mayor of Lawrence. And I'm going to hopefully have an opportunity for him to come in. What an amazing message to my Hispanic young men and my Hispanic young women, all my kids, to see, you know what I mean? Like, and know that civics, and even having 3 of the representatives be females, you understand? So that to me has been such a huge bonus, and I'm encouraging it, and I'm trying to get more diversity in the speakers.
I mean, I love it because our community, and you've heard me say it a lot,
Yep.
I love the fact that it's a changing community from when I started here in 1988. And I do think that we've got to have more people working with our kids that look like our kids.
Correct.
A little bit more. Your story is not unique. I mean, we had a group of kids, kind of a challenging group of 8th graders last year. It's a Hispanic and African American group of kids kind of hung out together. We loved them here. We think they were great kids, and they actually very respectful for here. But one day we had an intern from Merrimack College who was an African American football player who had to do X amount of hours as part of his service project with Merrimack. He came here. Well, it was like LeBron James, forget Rick Gorman, forget the rest of the people here. And one of the girls actually said to me, and I think she felt she was hurting my feelings, but she said, I just want to be honest, it was awesome to see someone who looks like me and who kind of has come from us. He came from actually a tough part of New Jersey, and she was someone that had been transplanted here from coming from Lawrence. And it was just a great day around here at the youth center, and I think we as a community need to continue to look at that. And
I agree.
I'm not saying we turn around and hire all different people, but I think we have to include things, and having some of your guest speakers and having people involved up here at the youth center, I think it's a great thing because we should be embracing this changing community, and I think it's great. We could talk for hours. We're already about 35 minutes, but I do have a few questions I want to kind of just quickly go to you. Let me ask you something. You've been around since, and I didn't realize how long you'd been here. And when I was talking about the very unfortunate situation we had in the late 90s when we lost 2 7th graders.
That was my first year teaching.
Your first year teaching, 2 7th graders to suicide. So you've been here. You've got a pretty good picture here of the last 20 plus years here. Tell me, do you believe middle school kids have changed? If they haven't changed, or if they have changed, how have they changed since you first started teaching here? I hate the line when people say the kids today. I don't necessarily think kids have changed drastically. I think there's lots of reasons the world's a little bit different than it is right now. But what's it like teaching middle school students in 2020 compared to when you first started?
So I hate this generation thing as well.
Sure.
I don't see the kids as different. It's still a job. It is a joy to work with the kids. I mean, 20 plus years in, I'm getting there early, I'm staying late. I just love it. And I think the kids are amazing. Some differences, obviously, we talk a little bit about, the demographics. I can see a demographic change. The one thing I guess that is also socioeconomic is, in growing up in North Andover, I have even more of a knowledge base, is, seeing just like two extremes of kids who live in these beautiful homes out country, and then kids who don't have as much. And, you talk about the shrinking middle class, and, I was a middle class kid, and there's not a lot of us left anymore. So it's kind of like you have these two extremes. But in terms of getting back to the kids, I really don't see them. I think 8th grade to me, and I always do a little test of whether or not I want to socialize with someone on a first impression. When I tell a person I teach 8th grade, if they roll their eyes and go, "Oh my God," it's kind of like I'm done with them, because I'm like, I don't understand why 8th grade, middle school gets such this bad rap, but right. They're such a great group of kids. It's such an awesome point in their life. I know it's a challenging point, but they're not little children. They're independent, but I've taught high school before. They're not quite as cynical as high schoolers. So you have them middle school, obviously. So they still get excited about games, and they still get excited about breakfast. But then on the other hand, they're not poking each other and things like that. So sure. I really, other than the two things that I mentioned, I think kids are kids, and I really don't see a change with the generation.
I mean, you're so passionate, and I guess I got to try to remember when I first knew you as a teacher here. I mean, your passion is growing, and this is one of my big things is we always say here, too much passion is not enough passion. But the reality here is we got to keep evolving. My opinion is you never stop learning. You got to keep growing, that type of thing. But now that you're at the age that you are right now, yep. raising kids that yep. Are heading to the middle school shortly, what would you say to your 23-year-old self when you started working at the middle school? What would you say now with all the knowledge and experience? What would you say to that new teacher, that new Pat McGravey 20 years ago?
So that's a great question. So I would say to them, be respectful and take advice from your older colleagues. Don't immediately, not go and listen to them, see what they have to offer, but take your own journey too. And I can remember, when I started teaching, I kind of wanted to please all my colleagues, and it's important to please your colleagues. It's totally important to do that. But I think you also have to think about the kids in your class. Those are, and I guess that's what I'd say. That's what I'd say to my 20-something-year-old self. The kids are the most important part of the job. Every single decision you make has to be about the kids. And I didn't have the confidence that I have now. And if I had had that confidence then, I would have disagreed more. I would have spoken out more. I would have stood up for myself more. And I think I probably need to do that a little bit more for myself now. But I can remember in my first couple of years teaching, I don't know, I was doing something cuckoo crazy, the kids were all loving it. And I remember, a specific teacher who was a veteran who will remain nameless kind of took me off to the side and said, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Why are you reinventing the wheel? And I have to admit, I dialed it down. I should not have dialed it down. Keep doing what you want to do. Be mindful of your colleagues and be respectful and listen to them and take their advice. But make your own journey. And you know what? There are going to be people out there that are going to doubt what you're doing, but you have to consistently think of the kids. Are people going to roll their eyes at you and maybe, possibly not be, I don't even know what the term is. You know what? It doesn't make a difference. If it works, it works. And I think that's what I would have told myself. Have more guts, speak up for yourself more, while at the same time walking the line of being respectful of the knowledge, because there is a lot of knowledge. There are so many veteran teachers that are amazing. Sure. And I don't want to put them all in the same category, but what I do want to say is, in any job that you have, there are going to be people, naysayers, whatever you want to call. And for me, I was worrying about all the naysayers when I should have just been worrying about the kids. So that's the advice I'd give myself.
Absolutely. Got one more question, and then we're going to give you the final word. I wasn't interested when I talk to people. I want to know a little bit about who are the big people in their life. Who were your mentors?
Oh boy. So this is kind of emotional for me because the mentors that I had, my first mentor was a 5th grade teacher that I had at Kittredge, Kevin McCarthy.
Oh, I remember Kevin, yeah.
And Kevin became my colleague in middle school. And I had a few learning issues, a few learning difficulties with my fine motor controls. And I just had I had a lovely 1st grade teacher, but 2nd through 4th grade was just horrible for me. 5th grade was a huge year for me. And I had Kevin, and he just got me so into school. He played games. He cracked jokes. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I didn't know teachers could be like this. And then he became my colleague. Right. And what was very moving for me is I got to spearhead and nominate and get him into the Teachers Hall of Fame. So I was there with him when he got into the Teachers Hall of Fame with his family. So that to me was amazing. When I was in high school, I had a high school teacher, Leo McHugh at Central Catholic, and he got me into government, and he made me realize that politics is addictive. He showed me a 1960 documentary on the Kennedy-Nixon, and I was sold. I was like, I didn't know it could be like this. And then I would say for college, my junior year abroad, I was at the University of Lancaster in England, and I had a professor in World War I history. His name was Professor John Gooch, and clearly the expectations of British professors to American professors, he gave me F's on papers. He said my writing was abysmal. I can't even tell you what he said to me in some of the things. But, we ended up having a really good relationship. I went to his house for dinner. It was things like that. So I would say like those 3 people I just always think of.
That's awesome. The reason I ask that question to many of my guests is I also think his life is short, and I'm sure you've already done this, but it's all good to reach out to some of our former mentors and tell them we appreciate them.
Yes.
I do it once a year. That's in great. August. I write a letter to someone that's been very important to me over the years. Been doing it now since 2004, and
wow.
It's a chance to actually say thank you, because sometimes we get to the point where we go to a funeral to try to say thank you, and it's too late. So good mentors you had there.
Very good.
Let me give you the final word here. Again, we could talk forever here. We like to give our guests a final word, and it would be your message to whoever. It could be to our parents in North Andover, to our administrators, to maybe your peers that are a little nervous about embarking on the new civics discipline in 2020. But what would you like to want people to know about you personally in the civics program that you're running?
So I think what I want the public to know is this is going to be a huge investment that is going to pay off big time. Because if we have engaged 8th graders, we will have engaged citizens. And I believe, the community tends to stay in North Andover. And I really, really feel strongly that it's going to continue. Parents, if I do have one of your kids or in the future, talk to them about what they learn. Give them an opportunity. Look at their identity project. Talk about what they're doing. I think that's huge. I think that's absolutely huge. Reaching out to the community also. I also want to say that I'm always looking for new speakers. So if you know any speakers that would love to come in and talk to kids, we'll have them come for 15 minutes, an hour, a day, whatever they need to do. Obviously it doesn't necessarily have to be a politician. It could be anyone. It's all about word of mouth. That's how I've gotten a lot of my speakers. The community itself, I would also say, the businesses, and I probably have to do a little bit better of reaching out to some of the businessmen and women in North Andover. They've been very supportive. Stachy's has supported us with some pizzas for the speakers. Butcher Boy Marketplace has been so wonderful. And so I'm reaching out. Dunkin' Donuts at Quick Pick, they sponsor the breakfasts. So these are things that I would love to do. in terms of colleagues and in terms of people either in North Andover or outside of North Andover. This is a new way of teaching, and I know there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of hesitation and change, and I can fully understand. But I really think the message is just try it. Give it a college try. Give it a shot. And I think what will sell it to people is if they see the engagement of the kids. If you don't have kids falling asleep in your class, if you don't have kids misbehaving, you don't have kids asking to go to the bathroom, you don't have these things that, I'm not saying it's a perfect class, but there is a direct connection between engagement and behavior, and just give it an opportunity and give it a shot. And to my students that are currently in the program, don't just give up civics in 8th grade. This is something that I think I'd like to stay with you. And hopefully, this Caitlin Parks who's coming back. I mean, I hope I can have 20 Caitlin Parks who's coming back, because I think it's very, very meaningful when kids see former NAMS people who walked the halls of NAMS coming back. So I think that is the message. And, and as I said, the administration and central office, youth services, the board of selectmen, they are all in. They are all in. I mean, I went to go visit the town manager yesterday just to kind of update her, and I was a little hesitant because she's got that very formal office with an administrative assistant, and she literally waved me in, and we had a conversation about the civics program. I mean, I can't imagine doing that my first year, walking into the town managers and saying, so it's been great. So I think everything's in place, and I think it's an amazing start, and I can't wait to see where it goes.
Well, first of all, I'm blown away with your passion. I'm glad I was asked to be one of the speakers. It was huge for me to kind of show kids that the youth center wasn't always here, that it was something that the kids worked to making, and their attention, their questions. I mean, they grilled me at one point on different things, and I loved it. And feedback I've gotten, kids have walked in and saying, like, I really liked what you talked about, and I've heard from parents. So it's working. You need to keep doing this. You need to keep growing it. You're a passionate educator, Pat, and I love what you do, and you need to continue to do that. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for letting me come, Rick. This has been so much fun.
Awesome. Folks, we will have this up probably by tonight at obviously all of our usual podcast sites, as well as our own YouTube channel here at the Youth Center. We do have a couple of coming up in the next 2 weeks before Christmas. We're doing a little different next week. We have Jackson Burbrick and Jack Morin coming in to talk about the amazing Super 8 baseball run last spring, where they ended up winning the Super 8 state championship. So they're going to talk about what that experience was like. And then right before Christmas, we have old friend Anthony Sederi to come back, and we're going to talk about addiction again. We're going to talk from a different perspective, too. We're going to be talking about our community a little bit more with addiction and things that we're doing together and things we're hoping to do together, too. And obviously, Anthony's a business owner in town and cares a lot about this community. So love Anthony, and he'll be back on it. So those will be our upcoming ones. And as we say all the time, if you have someone that would like to either come on the podcast or a topic you would like us to talk about, please get in touch with me here at the Youth Center. We'll make sure that happens. So we hope everybody has a great weekend, and we finish every podcast by saying too much passion is never enough passion.